I said, I don't want to say
There's some other projects you have coming up that I kind of wanted to talk about as well because they really excite me. So can you tell the audience a little bit about some of the VR projects that you have in the works?
Yeah, so there's one big project that I'm doing simultaneously as traditional theatrical style and VR. And the project's called Sunken, and it is an underwater thriller. It's a psychological horror film, and it takes place about 90% of the film takes place underwater with a family that is in a very perilous situation, put there by some very dark people. So, and it's just such a cool claustrophobic experience. I saw this movie called Buried.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And I kept thinking to myself, what's more claustrophobic than that? And I have this tendency to explore really psychological horror. And I wanted to just come up with something that was more claustrophobic. And I thought, being trapped underwater is probably worse than being trapped in a box because you're in this hospital environment. It's a this. There's no way to get out, and as far as you can see, it's not just a box. It's not just a bridge. It's as far as you can see, you're underwater, and there's no hope of surfacing. And what do you do? And then I thought, well, what's even worse than that? Let's take a whole family and put them down there. And then let's make a family that doesn't get along very well. And put them in a situation where they've got to figure out their own personal shit so that they can then work together to get out of that situation. And it's great because a lot of the things that people expect don't show up, and some of the things that nobody ever expects do show up. So it's a lot of fun, and we're doing that in virtual reality. We're doing that as a VR project. And I think we're going to do that actually in spurts. So we're going to release the VR of it in short episodes. Because I guess the general consensus is that VR is not a place where people can sit through an hour and a half of a VR experience, which I personally disagree with. I would be locked in.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's the investment right now that nobody really just wants it to go all out there. It's like it's waiting for a killer horror movie. It really is.
Yeah, and it's a great testing ground for it, and it's the right fan base for it. And I think that when it's over, I think there's not going to be a person who watches it who doesn't literally gasp for it. It's the most claustrophobic story I could have ever come up with. I'm pretty
super exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Delusion, they're touring with them. They haven't even released it episodically, but that's how they've done it, where Skybound's doing it. So it's like 4 episodes or 5 episodes or 5 minutes each. And people seem to like that format for now. But yeah, I'm all for the 90 minutes.
Me too. And I keep pushing it, and everybody says 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and I keep saying if we're going to do it, it's got to be 15 minutes. It's got, because you've got to get locked into that point of discomfort. If it's something that you say, oh, well, I've only got a couple of minutes, I can do this. It's not going to be the same. You've got to lock in.
Yeah, what I found is most VR right now feels more like an amusement park attraction, just something that's over. Even the scary ones are over very quickly.
Yeah.
They're not very story driven. Most of them, but there's some good ones.
Right.
Is technology a stumbling point for you with VR right now, or do you feel like it's at a place where you can do everything you need and that the right headsets are available and all that?
I think everything's ready for it. I think it's right for it. I think that it's just the right time. It's literally something you can watch on a Samsung one with your phone or an Oculus or whatever. So I think it's all ready to go. I don't think that there's anything that would really technologically that would stand in the way of the project. The biggest issue getting that one into production is a lot of people are afraid of the insurance costs. To be perfectly honest, they say, well, you can't take all your actors and put them underwater. Why don't you just shoot on a green screen and CG it all? No, thank you. I would rather go out and raise extra money and pay for more insurance than fake it, because there's no actual sense of danger if an audience watches an actor and knows that actor was not even remotely in a perilous situation. Not that there's any danger on, what I mean, but there's nothing real about it at all, then how is the audience gonna buy it?
Yeah, I mean, even as good as CG gets, you can still, like, your brain still is like, hey, that's not exactly real. Like, they've gotten really good with CG blood these days. I can still see it. I know it.
Yeah.
I know they've added it.
Yeah, you see a gunshot and you see some CG blood, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. Sometimes you can't, and you have to supplement with it, whatever. But I'm just not from that school, and I think I'm happy that I'm not from that school because part of what made movies so great, in my opinion, was the fact that it was somebody writes a scene and then 100 people show up to make that scene, and invariably either one thing or everything goes wrong while you're trying to make that scene, and you've got to literally hammer a square peg into a round hole to get it done. And the challenge of getting everything just in the can, that was part of what, I mean, half of the most amazing stuff that ever makes it into made it back was like by mistake. And now there's when you get into all this huge stuff with all this CG, there's literally no margin for error. And it's great, it creates these phenomenal theatrical experiences, but it used to be different.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And it's just not like that much anymore. And that's why I think I still love the horror world. It's still people doing it for the passion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because we talked about some of your heroes when you were growing up, but now who do you look up to, or what indie filmmakers, horror filmmakers, what indie or studio do you think are kind of doing it right or pushing the envelope these days?
I think the guys who did Get Out. I think again, it's tough because if you say so and so does a great job, or so and so is perfect at this or perfect at that, it's like anything. But there's so many opinions out there, and that's what makes it great. But that's also what makes it tough to kind of really land on anything, because even in a terrible film, there's great moments. And especially in the indie world, even if something is a complete train wreck, there might be a phenomenal shot, or a great monologue, or a great effect, or a great kill, and so I don't think it's fair to say that anybody is better than anybody else. I think if anybody gets a movie made and finished, become a member of a club. And I think that anybody who actually has what it takes to get a film in can deserves all the respect on the planet. It's really, really hard to get done.
I think that's very well said. I think that general audiences have a habit of just being, I liked it, I didn't like it. I think that horror fans in particular are a little more forgiving. It seems like they understand the process a little bit more. They champion indie films. That's kind of what I love about the horror community, because they know, like not everything was great, but also like these guys made it for $25,000, for example, or whatever.
Exactly.
They kind of look for that gem. Before we keep going, does anyone in the audience have any questions? I wanted to make sure we got any questions. If you do, raise your hand. I think we see some right there. What's your question?
Hi. Well, I'm kind of actually nervous because it's your father just made literally two of my favorite films of all time, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, and I literally just drove 2 hours just to come here because I've always wanted to see Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead in the movie theater, and I'm not really even sure if I have a question. I just really wanted to to get up here, and I'm really glad I did, and I'm curious what would you have to do to get into your production company, like if you had ideas to make a movie, or because I know you have a production company. That's correct, because I got here kind of late because I was trying to find park and there's so many people here.
No worries, man. I think it's really cool that you came out for this. It's definitely very cool to see this on a big screen. So I think that's really cool. And yes, I do have a company, Romero Pictures, and we have basically just a traditional submission process. And the reason for that is because of the legalities behind it. So just go on my website and shoot me an email.
Because sometimes I have like ideas and I just really want to make a movie at some point in my life. And your father, literally, I met him in Worcester, Massachusetts, in 2010 at the Rock and Shock convention, and he was just such a nice guy. And I met him, Tom Savini, Ken Foray. I think actually Galen Ross is supposed to be there next week, and Scott Renning. How do you say his last name? I'm sorry. Renninger?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say it wrong. But I really want to meet them too. And you're right about how movies are so much different now with the CGI, because I literally watch Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead like almost religiously. Like every October I watch it. Like I literally just watched Dawn of the Dead last night, and I only didn't watch Day of the Dead this week because I wanted to save it for this and stuff. And so I'm really nervous. And I guess I just wanted, I didn't mean to like make it too long or anything, but what memories do you have from either Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead from your father filming those movies? Like, did he bring you on set at all, or did?
I was pretty young for Dawn.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah.
Most of my memories for that are hanging out at his house and seeing some footage.
That's nice.
As he was trying to figure out.
Like Goblin. Did he?
Yeah, trying to.
I love
where
that
to,
those soundtracks.
Put tracks and which ones he liked.
Mm-hmm.
So those are most of my memories from that day. I went on the set a few times.
That's cool.
It was pretty cool.
It's awesome how I'm sorry I keep talking. It's just that you're so crazy. I didn't. Anyway, real quick though, I heard that the studio, like he was originally trying to make, when I watched the making of it, like a Raiders of the Lost Ark of zombie movies for Day of the Dead, and then I guess it said like they pushed his budget down to like $3 million or something, and it was insane how he managed to write such like a perfect movie in my opinion, because only for Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, those are two movies that I literally just know every single word for every character, and I just love how he puts so much craft into like just the set and the Tom Savini on the makeup, and just every actor like just seemed to do an amazing performance. And yeah, I didn't mean to keep talking. I know there's other people with questions, I'm sure, but I really appreciate it, man, for coming out here.
Thank you for the love.
Yep, no problem.
There you go. That's exactly why we do what we do, because there are guys out there like you.
I appreciate it.
You know what I mean? So that means the world to me that you came out and talked about that stuff, man. Truly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I guess tagging on to that, what advice would you have for indie filmmakers? So if he's gonna, for anyone, whether it's a guy in the audience or somebody else, they don't really have a budget, they wanna make a film, they wanna kind of do what you did when you were 18, just get it done. What would be your best advice for somebody just looking to get it done?
Just do it, literally. I mean, it is, it's one of those things, and it's, nowadays there's less excuses because we all carry 4K cameras and theaters in our pocket. So literally just get it done. I mean, the biggest thing that kept me from making my first feature for so long, I felt like, oh my God, I'm 17, I haven't made a feature yet, what the hell? But it was because I was second guessing myself. Just don't. If you've got something in your head and it has to get out, just do it. Get your army. Oh, and the quote is, an artist needs a brush, a writer needs a pen, a filmmaker needs an art.
That's it?
Yeah,
Nice.
so all I had to do was talk about something else, and I thought, but just find an army. I don't care if friends, family, whoever. Go. If you got to shoot a street scene, stand on a public sidewalk and ask a stranger to hold your camera.
Yeah, I think
Whatever you got to do, like just literally just get it done.
I think Soderbergh just shot, was it Unsane? He did it with an iPhone, so
Yeah.
use an iPhone to shoot a film.
He was a big inspiration for me. He had a show on HBO, I think it was on HBO, called K Street. It was a DC-based political show. And I read an article about it that he was working on something else at the time, and he was doing the show, and he would read the paper on Sunday, write the episode Sunday night, fly to DC, shoot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then cut Thursday, Friday, and they were there. And I always thought that's so cool. So I wrote a film called Radical, and I shot it. I think I wrote it in 4 days, and I shot it in 5 nights. And again, did it with literally a crew of 5 people. friends. My sound guy from Pittsburgh flew out to LA. A buddy of mine happened to own a t-shirt factory. And I said, hey, can I use your place to shoot a movie? And he said, yeah. And I said, cool, I'll be back, I'm gonna go write it. I wrote it, and then we shot it, and then I cut it, I think, in 20 days. And I had a movie in less than a month. And it was not something I wanted to do again. But I wanted to do it because I thought that it was impossible. So it's not.
That's a good reason to do it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else in the audience have any questions?
On your right arm, you have the word accountability.
I do.
Tattoo. What does that mean to you?
Everything. Literally everything. It's, my grandfather, who's on my left arm, just a quick backstory. When my mother was born, her mom died giving birth to her, and so he didn't know what to do. He wasn't ready to be a single dad. So he left my mom with friends for 5 years while he went and got a college degree. And he was driving horse-drawn taxis in Pittsburgh at the time to make money. And he came back 5 years later with a college degree and a job. And he retired vice president of Calgon Steel. And his nickname was the Accountable. And so he basically spent his life career being accountable for himself and for others. And they gave him like this silver tray with the signatures etched in it of everybody who he ever took care of, looked out for. And so at a very young age, I knew his name was the Accountable. And it just became a very important thing to me. We all make mistakes, we all do dumb shit. But, as long as you own it, and you're fully accountable for your own actions, then there's a peace that comes over you, and I think you can walk through life pretty calm.
So your family is all from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
How has that influenced you?
Oh, geez, that's a brand new question, I think. I grew up, my dad, one of his first jobs was he was a sideline photographer for the Steelers. And as a result, I got to go to some of the games that we won, all the Super Bowls and stuff. And in the 70s, when I was a little kid, it was right after sort of the steel industry had mostly died. And so Pittsburgh was this sort of floundering town with no identity other than sports. And this guy who made movies. And then it dawned, and I watched a whole city come out. And that was pretty cool. And so I think, there's a work ethic in Pittsburgh, and there's this sort of mindset that I've never seen anywhere else. And I think that was a large influence on me. It's just this whole, we don't stop until it's done, and we don't not do it because it's hard. And I think that's probably the best answer I can give. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we had another question back there. Yes.
Real quick, do you go for the just like your dad with slow moving zombies or the new fast moving zombies?
I'm just messing with you. Of course, it's the Romero zombie all the way.
Yeah.
Zombies don't run.
Yeah.
Although, as fans know, in the original Night, they do have the ability to use tools, like rocks to smash windows and problem solve. There's sort of like lumber. So, there was a lot of that, and over time, it's become this sort of divisive, like you asked, runners or walkers. I'm definitely a slow zombie guy, but I do really latch on to some of that stuff that my dad had in the early days with the original Night. There actually is some residual ability there.
You know, and I think that's all. What's interesting about that too, because we're going to be seeing, you know, I guess most people in the audience are going to be seeing Day. You know, it's one of the things that I love about Day of the Dead, and you know, I guess for your father as well, and for a lot of filmmakers, I guess if you look at like Tobe Hooper, you look at John Carpenter, like a lot of their movies were not appreciated when they first came out. Like The Thing, you know, Carpenter's Thing remake did not do well. It went up against E.T. that year, or Kubrick's The Shining. All, you know, found an audience later, and I find that a lot with Day of the Dead. Like I think a lot of people are now kind of really turning on to that because now we see so many movies that are just kind of a template of what we've already seen in Night, and Day is the one that kind of really stands out to me because it's kind of breaking those original rules.
Yep. It does break the original rules, but it also doesn't if you go back to that opening scene.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like, and people forget that about
Yeah,
the
they
opening.
kind of ignore them.
Yeah,
just
they're like,
think about
oh,
the
well,
slow moving ones.
Yeah, and they think, well, it's a horde, and that's the only thing that's dangerous. That's not true. There was a single zombie in the opening scene of Night who problem solved and used tools. When you break it down to the most basic version of it, he used a rock, smashed a window, and figured out how to gain entry into a vehicle. So that, you know, so in my opinion, Day brought that opening scene completely full circle.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. You know, a lot of people have asked your father about this. I've asked plenty of people about this. Zombies are bigger than ever now. You know, why? Why do people latch onto it? What's your answer to that? Why are zombies bigger than ever?
Because when Night of the Living Dead went into the public domain, while it was a hard pill for those guys to swallow back then, I try to look at it from the standpoint of what they did was ultimately create an open source monster, basically. So they took this thing and it ended up being literally thrown to the world for basically anybody to do anything they want. So it became this place for special effects guys to start their craft. It became this place to inspire authors, musicians, bands, and all kinds of artists all across the board because nobody was going to get in trouble for messing with it. You know, not like the Universal monsters. You know, if you go out and try to infringe on the Universal monsters,
Yeah.
you get like a whole building of lawyers.
Yeah, they'll go after it.
And you know, and that just wasn't the case. So I think what happened was they inadvertently created this practice ground for people to feel free to go out and express themselves. And up until then, really, I mean, independent film wasn't really, it was like this weird art house shit back in the 60s, which was awesome. But then here these guys come with something nobody had ever really seen before, unless you were a hardcore horror fan and had seen some of the early things like that. But then here we are with these creatures that everybody can jump in and play with. And I think that's what kicked it off. And I also think that there was this sort of elitism that came with it too, because you had to seek it out back then. You know, like it was the stuff kids weren't allowed to watch, but every kid had seen it. You know, and back then in the 70s, you know, it was like a badge of honor. You know? Yeah, I've seen that. No way.
Yeah, hey, that's still burned into my mom's memory. She won't watch it. That scene with the zombies are stabbing her mom. It makes her gag just to think about it. She can watch anything else, and she's like, she couldn't see The Exorcist for a while. I got her to see it. And she's like, you got me to see The Exorcist. I won't watch Night of the Living Dead again. And she loves Dawn, but there's just something about that it's just it burned into people.
Yeah, and you know, and it created. It was like it was the perfect thing at the perfect time, and it created this fear because you know I think what my dad touched on so much was that it could be literally anybody. It could be you know your wife, your daughter, your best friend, your neighbor, your mailman, whoever, and especially back then in the times, man, that was some powerful stuff, you know. And then you've got couple that with the fact that you've got all these kids that were our age back then finding it when they weren't allowed, and then that became like this sort of permanent scar that led to, you know, I think where we are at now, because all of us are now our age today and have built on our lives touched by this stuff. And so I think that all of that, you know, I mean, we literally, I've got friends who've raised their kids for 15 years to be zombie fans, you know, and have, you know, take their 2-year-old and dress them up like a zombie for Halloween. And, you know, it's crazy. It's unbelievable, but it's beautiful.
I was walking to the theater today and I saw 2 5-year-olds. They had on, one had a stormtrooper mask, I don't remember what the other one had on, and they were fighting imaginary zombies. They had their Nerf guns, and they were just, that's what they were doing. Like, that is how much it is in pop culture these days. Because at 4 years old, you're fighting imaginary zombies.
Yeah,
That's
you're playing
your
humans
boogeyman.
versus zombies. Yeah, it used to be like Cowboys and Indians, and then it was like some other stuff when we were all little kids, and Cops and Robbers was a big one. And now it's humans versus zombies, and kids run around and they, you know, fake fight each other and turn and do the whole thing. You're a zombie now.
It's incredible.
It really is. And, you know, to think that where it all came from, and to think about the fact that was my dad and his partners, you know, I mean, it's a lot to think about.
Yes, no, it's a lot. I mean, they changed culture and pop culture forever without Night of the Living Dead. Like, imagine entertainment and society would, like, it would be completely different. If I had a time machine and we stopped that movie, like, we'd live in a different world. All you would be gone. There'd be no horror fest.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, conventions, all of this stuff was born from that, you know. I mean, so I've even heard people say that we wouldn't have Comic-Cons if it weren't for what those guys did. You know, not just my dad, but all of those guys back then.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you were talking about Carpenter and Toby Hooper and everything. And, you know, I remember sitting in my dad's apartment in downtown Pittsburgh, and he would be on the phone with those guys, and they would be having the same conversations that we have today as artists. Man, it's gonna suck. Why am I even doing this? These movies, just what, you know? And or even when you get it done, man, people don't like it, you know, and if they don't like it, am I done? You know, and these guys would have those conversations with each other, and it was crazy to listen to, you know, because it was like, I remember Carpenter would call him, like, he was like music for him, he was writing.
That's incredible.
and my dad, I would only hear my dad's side of it, people like, no, I'm telling you, it's good, man. Stop it. Put it in the movie, it's good. Pause. I'm not going to tell you. You know, stuff like that. So it was cool. And John did a lot of the same stuff like that too. So those were really cool memories.
Yeah, oh, great movies. Before we wrap up here, does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question about character creation. Some of my favorite characters in all movies come from these types of movies. And so I'm wondering, when you're writing a character, do you have a very particular actor in mind who you're going to pair it with? Or do you just write the character and then seek out an actor who you hope is going to best portray it?
That's a really good question. I don't know how other people do it. All I can do is tell you that, when I do it, I don't, unless there's a very specific character that's inspired by an actor, I try not to think of any actor when I write anything. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's all business nowadays. It's not like it used to be. Now you've got, you know, sales agents telling you, well, yeah, we'd love it if you use that guy. He's great, but we can't sell him in France. You know, so you have to have these conversations. And those conversations kill creativity. And so if I were to think about that stuff while I was writing, I would go insane, and I would probably never finish a script. So what I try to do is I try to write a character and I try to put him in a scene. And then I actually try to let those characters lead me through the rest of the script. And I try to follow them in my mind. It doesn't make sense when I say it out loud, but I basically just try to I come up with these characters, put them in situations, and then follow them and try to write down what they do. Like, even though I'm writing. It's this weird disassociative thing. So no, I can't think of an actor when I write something.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Talk a little bit about practical versus special effects. I see like now the more modern day horror films where you see special effects mostly 90% of the time.
Like CGI, you mean?
Yeah. But could you see that ever going back to practical again? Because it does have that sort of feel where you're like, oh, this is authentic, versus special where you can obviously be like they're in a green screen, like what you're saying, when you're underwater, you see that they're in a green screen. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how you see it?
Yeah, sure. I'm practical effects all the way. I mean, like I said, I did a movie called Stunt and Hill, and we had a couple of effects in there that we had to supplement, just because, like, at the end of the day, we scalped a girl and ripped out her intestines. And it was really fun, but you could see the scene, and so we had to go in digitally and kind of remove that. But that was just a little bit of like rotoscoping and things like that. All blood was practical. And again, my big stance on that is that, there's a difference between an actor who feels a squib go off and an actor who's, reacting to somebody going bang. There's a difference. There's a difference between an actor being covered from head to toe with blood and an actor who sits in makeup while somebody carefully makes it look like they're covered with blood. I'm the guy that runs up with a 5-gallon bucket of fake blood and throws it at my actor. Which I don't know. I guess it's too late. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll come back for a brief intro for Day of the Dead, but let's give a huge hand to George Sierra. Thank you very much for coming back. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Romero, it's such an honor to meet you.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Thank you. Do you think I could actually get a picture with you, man? Oh, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.